And it was then that I felt a hand go on top of my head, and I could feel the hand wasn't human. So it was long fingers and claw-like on the ends of it. So, and then I felt my head being moved, sort of pushed back. And it was then as my head was moved back, I could see then it was what would be, a typical grey. It's probably about 5 foot. And it had the large black eyes looking into my eyes.
Bodega is a guide and a storyteller, escorting you through the night, lighting the way, warding off thieves, ghosts, demons, and other oddities. Along the journey, his companions would often share with him the most curious of stories that he'd record in his codex. Perhaps you just might find yourself traveling with a Bodega and sharing one of yours. Click that like. If you're new here, subscribe and have the bell hit for notifications to stay up to date on all of the new content. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, and welcome to Codega's Codex of Curiosities. I'm Rai, your guide, exploring these curiosities along the way and bringing on guests to tell their experiences. Tonight we have Michael Kameron coming on with some experiences around alien abduction. Seems to be a bit of the thing that keeps going on here lately. I don't know if it just goes in waves. Right now it is alien abductions, and that's where we're going to go. Also some paranormal. He is the author of a book called High Strangeness, and we're going to get into that here right away. Before we do, though, of course, like I always say, everyone, make sure, if you enjoy the show, leave a comment, whether it be on Spotify, Apple, Google, wherever, leave a comment, give me a rating as well. And on YouTube, leave a comment, like, subscribe. That's a big thing, getting everybody to subscribe as well. And of course, like I always say, more content is going to be on the YouTube channel than Spotify or Apple. So come on over and check it out. By all means, listen to my episodes on Spotify or Apple, but come over and check out the other content here on YouTube. That being said, I have a Patreon, $5 Patreon level, gets you a big shout out and really helps me out. $25 gets you some merch. Also, I have a store in Printify. So in the show notes, I'll have the link. Come check it out. I got lots of things. I got shirts, I got hats, I got candles. Yeah, I got candles. I got flip-flops, I got, you name it, I got it. Hoodies. All right. Okay, without further ado, let's bring Mr. Michael Kameron on. Michael, welcome to Codega's Codex of Curiosities.
Hello, and thank you for having me.
Awesome. Thanks for coming on. I know it's pretty late there right now in the UK, and I really appreciate you making the time for me.
Yeah, and that's fine by me. Thank you.
Awesome. So why don't you tell our listeners and viewers a little bit about yourself, and where they can find you as well.
Hi, I'm Michael Kameron. I was born in London during the 1970s. And apart from the experiences I've had, I'm a pretty normal guy. So I was born and raised in the strict Roman Irish Catholic environment and family. And I grew up in a house that was haunted. And from my experiences in my book, it concentrates basically on the experiences I had with the paranormal and as an alien abductee from aged 4 going into 17 years old.
Wow, that's intense. You kind of sound a little bit like me though too. You know, growing up in a haunted house, being raised Roman Catholic, strict Roman Catholic as well. You know, and I've often wondered if this perhaps there might be a connection between the paranormal and the and aliens in general. You know, like I know there isn't definitely, but I wonder if there's some crossover in there as well. Perhaps maybe some implanted or curtain or like screen memories that are put in when in fact it could have been aliens instead of ghosts. What are your thoughts on that?
There seems to be some sort of connection between poltergeist activity and the infamous greys, because there seems to be a crossover, like you said, between the activities of the greys and what we see with hauntings. So a long time ago we were in the thinking that the paranormal and alien abduction and anything of this high strangeness was separate from the other, but we know now that they are interconnected in some sort of way. Mostly multi-dimensional.
Yes.
But now a lot of researchers, I think, have come in from, and also from their investigations to that thought process that it's all connected. We're not separated. They're not separated into boxes. They actually all are one type of phenomena. I guess it might be that even that a lot of this activity is known to each other.
Interesting. Yeah. And I agree with you. You know, I definitely believe that there is definitely some crossover and some interconnections. And one thing I find is, like, you'll have your ghost hunters and then you have your UFO chasers, that are chasing, and there's kind of separate. They don't really compare notes, or alien abductees, and ghost experiencers, or people who've had these experiences. They don't compare notes. And it's not that there's never been really a thought to do that until, I would definitely say, maybe in the last 15 years, 10 years even, where it's starting to be becoming more and more common to, especially with the rise of all the shows and shows like my own and everyone else's, where, these stories kind of seem to have these large crossovers. So why don't you start with yours? You said, let's start with some, you take us where we'd like to go. So you take the lead.
I mean, I was born in, as I said, in London. I was born in an area which would have had a lot of, over the decades, it would have seen a lot of events that could have basically, highlighted high strangeness, with hauntings. I mean, I lived not far away from the Tower of London, and it was a place, where we had a lot of, in those times, a lot of deaths.
Of course, yes.
I mean, in the house that I was actually born in, I only realized when I was writing my book that it was actually the blueprints of this particular area was actually the Roman burial grounds for lepers, So
Interesting.
So when I was born, I was an unexpected child. I was born premature. But when I basically left the hospital and returned to what would be my childhood home, it was then that the house was plagued with hauntings. We had cold spots in the house. There was disembodied voices that would call my mum when she was in the house on her own. Call out her name and sometimes touch her. on the back of the neck. When she turned around, there was nobody there, but she could feel a presence there. There was objects that would vanish and then reappear. This is quite common within hauntings. And then, but the activity got a little bit more sinister when it started to become, more poltergeist activity. A presence in the house made itself more more known to everyone in the house. And at times, my brother Francis, who I mentioned in my book, he's one of my older brothers. He was laying in bed once, and a really heavy oak wardrobe was pushed on top of him when he was in the bed. So he wasn't injured, luckily, but he was really shocked. And another time, Kevin, who's mentioned, another one of my older brothers, he was shoved down the stairs by an unseen force. He actually felt somebody coming towards him, and then almost like pushing past him, and was shoved down there. He fell down the stairs, hit his head, but he wasn't injured, just again shocked. So when this, and there was a lot of knocking sounds, strange banging sounds on the wall. I mean, the house that I grew up in, the walls were solid. So if you were to bang them with your hand, it would just, make the sound of a thud. You wouldn't hardly hear it. But when the banging started in the household, it was always at night when everyone had gone to bed, and my dad would almost certainly get up and listen, and then go down the stairs to investigate. He obviously thought there was an intruder rummaging around in the house. So he would go down and there was nothing there. But when he returned to bed, the noise would basically start again. So, but the sound of it when it was banging on the walls, it sounded like it was coming from the bottom of the stairs. So someone intelligent was deliberately banging on this particular wall so that he would get a response. But the sound of it, though, sounded like what you would have now in modern times, like a stereo sound effect.
Yes.
So the sound would echo throughout the house. It'd be really loud and echo. But whenever he went down, there was nobody there. And I think over a period of time, it got more worrisome. But because my parents lived in a really strict Catholic environment, everyone knew everyone. That sort of thing really wasn't spoken about. So I think it was only after a little while that they then approached, the church, and the priest come and bless the house, and it died down for a little while.
Wow. So that's really interesting. And you said it didn't really start until you came around, kind of thing, is what you're saying.
Yeah. It could have been a coincidence, but there was a lot of things that happened in the house around me at the time. So I was later on, I was sort of blamed for that activity.
Yeah, I would say, maybe you were some sort of bridge, especially if you came in premature, sometimes that, before your time, you still have a stronger connection to the spirit world, perhaps. And maybe there was some sort of stronger, like a bridge there.
Yeah, it's very possible. You do get. I was saying the other day on the podcast, about sometimes, you go into areas and they have a particular feel about them. There's been a lot of sightings, and sometimes I think people, perhaps maybe we're some sort of key that unlocks like Pandora's box of high strangeness, or whenever you're in a group with particular people, you act as a conduit. You are able to amplify the energy, and perhaps amplify the energy of the other people that are with you to experience more. But that again, that can be positive or negative on the person or the energy that's being produced.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. Interesting. Now, so that was some paranormal. When did possibly the alien activity happen in that for you as well?
Well, I describe myself, from what I've discovered now, more of what I've discovered over the years, that I'm actually an alien abductee from birth, as a baby as well. So, my parents did tell me much later on that they witnessed, what they didn't know at the time. It was in the 1970s. You know, there was no internet or anything like this. But what they observed at the time when I was in my cot is basically what would be now the greys standing over my cot, looking down at me, and when they were observed by my parents, they would vanish. And you know, these particular beings were observed by Sean, who he shared some of the experiences with me when we were kids, and he's like 2 years older than me. And you know, he was a lot of the time absolutely terrified of what he was seeing. I mean, it's possible as well that he was abducted at an early age, because he was at the time on the beach full of people with my parents, and he vanished from that beach, and there was police that were basically looking for him throughout the night, and then suddenly he just appeared almost from nowhere. You know, and so that sounds like a possible abduction. And also, and I only say that because of the experiences that me and him shared growing up.
Wow.
I don't know
how long of a time was he gone for? You know, what length of time was he missing for?
At least I would say 7 hours.
Wow.
Okay. It was a long time, and the police were involved, and the police looked for him. They couldn't find him. And again, it's almost like what you get on some of these, you know, these disappearances in the national forests, when they say they search in the same place over and over again, and suddenly that person reappears there, even though they've searched that over and over. And this is what happened to Sean.
And where did he reappear?
Yes, she reappeared in an area again of which was searched like more than a dozen times by the people that were with him, family, and also with the police. So, you know, they didn't know where he'd come and, you know, where he'd gone and how he got back. So there was people there, and he was just suddenly there amongst people, and no one see him go and no one see him come back.
Did he ever talk about that or have any memories, or just kind of, what did he say or recall?
Well, you know, when he was growing up, he did remember it, but he didn't have any recall of where he went, you know, but he did remember what happened in the respect of that he went missing and that there was a big hunt for him.
Jeez. Okay. So let's so your parents had seen what only could be described as grays looking over you. Where does it go from here?
I mean, my dad, my parents, my dad was in the Royal Air Force during the war as a flight engineer. He did have some paranormal experiences that he did tell me about, but he was very much a nuts and bolts type of person. He was also, you know, he was a Grand Knights Templar as well. So, you know, these type of themes, you often see these in alien abduction families, where somebody in the family, they're either connected with the military. So my dad and my mum were connected in that way during the war, but also my uncles were, you know, were at the time connected with the military. So, but and another thing that you see, I think, with other abductees is, you know, the connections with the church. You know, my dad was friends with a lot of high-ranking, like, cardinals. And so when I was growing up in my household, the people that I would see frequently in my house would be high-ranking members of the church, higher-ranking Freemasons, and people that were in the military circles.
Interesting. Okay, so I've been talking with a lot of alien abductees recently, and one of them was saying that to be an abductee, someone has to, like you yourself can do this, but someone else has to have given permission somehow, maybe even unknowingly, but given permission for you to be abducted. Do you feel that could be a possibility?
Well, the abduction program is not nothing new. It didn't start, with what we call Roswell or anything like this. The
Yes.
abduction program has been going on for centuries. It's been on since biblical times. It's just that
Hmm.
we've not been aware of it. But now with the internet and social media and the sharing of information between researchers and experiences, we can see there are links that go way, way back. But
Yeah.
also often you have, as I said, you have a connection with the military in regards to the abduction programs. New Agers will tell you that you choose to have those experiences. You don't choose to have those experiences. You're basically taken by force and you're violated.
Hmm.
And the
Oh,
experiences that you have are not good.
yeah, and I agree with you, and I'm not saying that you're doing it by choice, but I'm saying somehow someone has made an agreement,
Yeah.
like maybe unknowingly made this agreement. And in your case, when you're being so young, I wouldn't suspect it to be you. I don't know if you know who Karen Wilkinson is. She's written the book Stolen Seed, Evil Harvest. I know I'm butchering it. It's not that. I think it's Stolen Seed, Evil Harvest, and it's about her being an abductee and being subjected to a lot of genetic experiments of sorts. And that is her understanding, is that someone has to, and it might, and like I said, not you, it could be someone else, but just something to ponder, to think about as well.
I think as well, something that we should look at as well is, regards to past lives, because I believe a lot of the same people are re-abducted when they return here.
Interesting.
So when if for instance as an example, you were abducted, say, a few centuries ago,
Mm-hmm.
and then you return here in a different body. I mean, the Greys, it's interesting because the Greys always say that we have containers. Our bodies are containers, which means our consciousness can move from one body to another. And
Yeah,
the Greys do this. They don't actually die; they move to another body. So
of course.
I mean, our consciousness is able to do this. But if we were, say, abducted a few centuries ago, and then we return, we reincarnate, what's to say that the same soul is not again abducted in a recycling process, that the abductions take place again? And this is also interesting in regards to implants.
Mm-hmm.
So the implants, when you die, the implants remain in your etheric field, your aura. So when
Okay.
you return here and there's you have brain activity again, the brain powers and the body powers that implant, and they're
Mhm.
able to reconnect with you again. So we know the Greys have longer lives than us. They have lives that can go on for thousands and thousands of years. So it could seem plausible that that could be the case as well.
Yeah.
But answering your question, I do believe that the military are more connected with the alien abductions, than what they would
That
like
they
the
led
public
on
to
to.
know. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and I would say it's probably, it would probably come from the military end
Mm-hmm.
that have given the permission for the Greys to continue to abduct people.
I, I agree too. Some sort of covenant as well. And you kind of piqued my interest when you said past lives. We could be abductees from past lives as well, because I did have another abductee on recently, Zach, and he was describing that when he was abducted, they did some sort of experiment on him, but after they took him to a room
Mm.
and they opened a box, they gave him a box, they opened it, and it literally was kind of like a replaying of his past life. And so when you're saying that it could have been, yeah, so if he's been abducted and now they're showing him something that happened in his past, a past life, it ties together. Yeah.
I mean, it could be that they may have been showing him something almost like the Akashic records,
Mm-hmm.
which is basically, and it records everything that we do, but also in history. So it's
Yeah.
like an imprint, isn't it? Basically, you know, recording all of our actions, our thoughts, everything. So it could be that, but we also know the Greys lie as well about things. I know that they've told military a lot of lies, which can be checked out now, and it's been shown that they're not very trustworthy beings.
I have to agree with you. I have to agree with you totally. Like I don't think the Greys are. I know some people think that they're like aliens are great, and maybe some of them are, but for most part, like I think it's a split almost in a way.
I think there are different alien species out there, and I think it's a little bit of a mix, like human beings. There's good and there's bad, but there are some that are similar to Greys that are benevolent, but the main part of the abduction program is primarily run by the Greys, but they're not in charge of it. But the Greys are not, they're not benevolent. They don't care. I mean, you can't trust anyone who's basically come in and taking children and abducting them, can you? What trust can you put in them? It's in the same manner if it was a human being doing it.
Exactly. I could not agree more with you. That's exactly it, Michael. It's if they are abducting people and children as well, that's it. That's not good. Yeah, that is clearly not something that is good. Now, would you like to get in some of your abduction stories themselves? Do you have any recollection of being abducted on a craft or in a facility, possibly?
Well, the thing is, one of the experiences that I did have is growing up. I grew up in a schoolhouse. My dad was there, the schoolkeeper or caretaker. And in my book, I talk about that house and I talk about the school grounds. But, one of the experiences I had is in the nighttime, my dad died when I was 15. So when I literally, just a few months, I turned 16. And then I ventured out into the school grounds, which I did quite a lot. I was quite a lonely child. I was quite isolated from others around me, So, and I didn't obviously talk about what was happening to me because a lot of the time I didn't understand it myself.
Of course.
And there was no sort of reference, media or anything that I could read about, or I couldn't go anywhere. The only people I would really speak to, if I did, would be my family GP, my doctor, or somebody from the church. And if I went to them, they'll, say that I would be going to hell, because that was the old way of thinking. And the doctor at one time did try to have me sectioned under the Mental Health Act, because I had, in that experience, it was because I actually see my dad appear to me after he died.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And, I had an experience much later on, which wasn't an NDE, a near-death experience. It was an out-of-body experience where I did actually go through a rainbow-type tunnel, which you do often is described by people that have near-death experiences. But on this particular experience, I actually went through the tunnel, and as I went through the tunnel, I could see faces within the tunnel, within the spectrum of the colors within the tunnel. And I didn't recognize any of them. They were spirits. I didn't recognize any of them. But when I got further along the tunnel, I could see my dad. And he was there and he greeted me. And, he spoke to me briefly. And then I returned to my body. So that would have been like an out-of-body experience.
Of course. Yes, definitely.
But it was quite, a strong experience. It was a nice experience, but a strong one. But when I mentioned that I'd seen my dad to my family GP, who actually was a friend of my dad's, because my dad was born in Dublin and he'd come from Dublin as well. So and he said to me, that was, that can't be true. When you die, there's no life. And I said, well, obviously there is. Your consciousness or your soul, it survives physical death. And he didn't like me challenging his authority. And so he then called my mum the next day and said that, he wanted to take me away and section me under the Mental Health Act, because obviously I was going crazy and he wanted to take care of me. probably with, you know, lots of drugs. So and it was only because my mum knew, you know, that I had experiences in that, and she just, you know, refused for him to do that. Otherwise, I probably would have been sectioned under this dark mental health act because of your, because you're having these experiences. It's crazy.
Yeah, like it's kind of his ego, because you challenged his authority, you know, on you know, this is the way things are, and you challenged it, and it's like no, which is crazy. I find ego to be one of our biggest downfalls. You know, I know we do need it to an extent, but too many people let it take the driver's seat. And just like we're seeing in that scenario where, you know, you challenged his ego and he was ready to have you committed over it, you know, ruin your life.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I was quite afraid at the time because I thought, you know, it would have. I mean, there had been a lot of deaths in the family, so I experienced death quite young in the family. Like, and he, you know, he added basically to my grief, really. So I was frightened for a while because I thought he could and he would come and get me, because I actually, you know, confided in him that I'd had this experience.
Yeah, yeah.
But, you know, going back to the time when I went out and ventured out into the school grounds, I actually went out into the school grounds. It was, you know, it's quiet. It was quite late at night, so there wasn't hardly anyone around. The only time you could hear anything was a police car with its lights flashing and sirens blazing as it flew up the road, because there was a large police station not far from, or just opposite my house, which is still there to this day. So I used to sit in the center of this large playground, and I used to remember listening to, on a Sony Walkman, you know, clipped to the belt of my trousers, you know, back then, the cassettes. And I remember playing Spirit of the Red Man by New World Music on a cassette. So I remember what it was. And I used to be looking up at the sky, and I used to meditate at that time as well. So I used to, you know, participate in meditation at quite a young age as well.
Cool.
And it was then, you know, whilst looking at the sky, that I felt that something or somebody was watching me, but it felt like it was coming above me from the sky. And then when I looked up, I couldn't see anything. I mean, it was always a clear night. This was in the summertime, you know, so it's very hot.
Okay.
And then, you know, a little later on, when I started to get tired, it was coming, you know, more later or earlier in the morning. And I returned back to the house, and it was everyone that was in the house was in bed. And I remember when I was going up the stairs to my bedroom, I had this overwhelming feeling, you know, I just stopped. I had this overwhelming feeling that I shouldn't go to my bedroom. I should go downstairs and sleep. You know, and I ignored it first and took another few steps. And then again, I had another feeling. It's almost like a voice, but it wasn't a voice, or you think it's your own thoughts. And then in the end, I went back downstairs. So I went into what would be like the living room.
Yeah.
And it was, you know, I opened the door and closed the door behind me. And because it was hot, I didn't need to, you know, I didn't need to cover anything. And I lay back on the sofa that was there. And it was because I was tired. I closed my eyes, you know, and I started to drift off. But then suddenly my eyes shot open, and I become aware of a presence in the room. And for a lot of abductees, you often find that they say there's a feeling that comes with this, which is dread. You know, it's a feeling of panic.
Yes.
And it's a feeling that increases over time the more you have these abductions. It's almost like you know when they're around, but you can't see them, you feel them, you know. And I think the author, best-selling author Whitley Strieber described these feelings as well, you know. It's almost like you're put on high alert. And you know that they're about. But in this particular experience, I had this feeling that overcome me. And the first thing I wanted to do is to get off the sofa and run for the door, you know, to get out of that room. But obviously, you know, I'd obviously been in a way influenced to go there. So when I was there, what happened next was I started to have the paralysis. And, you know, I must point out, though, I wasn't having, it wasn't sleep paralysis. I was awake.
Okay.
And I was physical on the sofa. I could feel the sofa beneath me and I could
Yeah.
see the room. So, you know, I wasn't outside the body, just to, you know, clarify that. And I wasn't feeling the paralysis because I was in an altered state between one or the other. So I was physically there. And it was then that I felt somebody was behind me, but I couldn't see who it was. But I felt a presence behind me and I couldn't move, and I was trying to move. And it was then that I felt a hand go on top of my head, and I could feel the hand wasn't human. So it was long fingers and claw-like on the ends of it. So, and then I felt my head being moved, sort of pushed back. And it was then as my head was moved back, I could see then it was what would be, you know, a typical grey. You know, it's probably about 5 foot. And they had the large black eyes looking into my eyes. You know, and at that time, that's when I become panicked. You know, I was afraid then. And I was struggling this paralysis. I wanted to get up and get out of the room. And I couldn't move. The only thing I could move was my eyes. You know, so it was earlier on than this that I realized that these particular beings, they can paralyze or create paralysis of the body, but they can't stop the eyes from moving. So they don't seem to have any control over that function. And it was then that I see a second grey coming towards me. And this grey was almost like floating. It wasn't walking, you know, it's floating slightly off the ground. And in its right, I guess, in its right hand, it had a wand-like object that glowed.
You say a wand-like object?
Yeah. It was like a fin-like object. And you know, when it
sorry to interrupt you. That's not the first time I've heard of a wand-like object before.
It's the first, but when it was coming towards me, I started to panic even more because obviously there's two of them. I can't move. I've got these two beings in the room, and obviously there's trauma and terror associated with others that I've had in the past. And then the only thing that I want to do to the one in front of me is punch it and kick it and get it away from me. But obviously I can't do that. I'm trying to scream out for help from whoever, you know, in the house with me. And although I can open my mouth, nothing doesn't come out. But in my head, I can feel myself screaming. And I know they can hear me, but they just ignore you. They just carry on with what they're doing. So this one with the wand, he comes towards me, my mouth is opened, and he places this wand-like instrument in my mouth, and I can feel it burning my mouth. So, you know, and at that time, you know, I'm in a panic. I'm in a state of terror because I can actually feel this, whatever it is it's doing, I can feel it. And it's just standing there looking at me whilst it's carrying out this, what I would only say is torture.
Of course, yeah.
And there's nothing I can do about it. And then it's, you know, when it does stop, eventually does stop, it probably was a shorter time than what you actually think. But when you're in that state of panic, it always seems longer.
Yeah.
And then it, you know, the object he had in his hand, it didn't, the light on it went off and he stepped back. And then the one hold in my head let go. And it was then that I could see that they were sort of, you know, huddled together like they were talking. And then it was only at this moment I couldn't move still, but I could move my eyes. But it was at this time that I was quite shocked to see standing in the corner of the room what could be, you know, only described now as a United States Air Force officer standing there watching.
Really?
And he was dressed in what would be, you know, a uniform of the US Air Force. And he was standing there, you know, just observing. I didn't see him in the beginning. It was only when the grey in front of me sort of moved to the side. But then he moved across to where the greys were, and they vanished together. And then it was after that, then I was able to move my body. But when I got up off of the sofa, I was disorientated, so I fell down, and my legs felt weak, and I just panicked and rushed out of the door. But the first thing I did, I wanted to see what was happening with my mouth.
Yeah.
But when I went into what would be the small toilet downstairs, and I turned on the light and looked in the mirror, but there was nothing there. There was no sign of anything that they had done to me. But at the same time, I felt this object doing something inside my mouth. And so, but I then went, it was light now, early morning, but light. And I went upstairs, and I just basically fell to the floor in exhaustion. And I actually fell asleep on the floor. And it was only, I guess, hours later that I woke up, and just carried on really with my day. But I still remembered what had happened to me, and I remember it in full detail, what happened to me all those years ago. This was 1984, and it's 2024 now, and I remember it as though it was just yesterday. In visually, and in the feelings that I had. And it's difficult as well, because you can't tell anyone.
Of course.
Even now, though, I often explain this in podcasts. Even now, in ufology, I still believe that for most parts, alien abduction is still considered a taboo subject. Although there is more, people that do talk about it, but I do feel, and I've spoken to other abductees, and they feel the same way, that it is still, it's one of those, it's one thing to see an object in the sky, lights in the sky, but it's another when you're actually speaking to someone who claims to have experiences where they're abducted. And another thing is what you find as well, which is a shame, that a lot of people tend to avoid you when you tell them your experiences with the greys are actually negative. They're not love and light, they're not positive. But there's nothing positive about any of these experiences. I mean, if I could say it was positive, I would. But when you're being abducted and taken against your will, and having all sorts done to you, it's very difficult to say the experience is positive.
Yeah, I agree totally. I think you're exactly what you said. Now that's really interesting as well, that you actually saw a U.S. Air Force, officer, which that is something I have not heard before. There's a lot of similarities in your stories, but that's unique. It's and like you said, when they were working with the military, I believe that. I really do believe that. And well, you saw it. That's and I also have to agree with you. Like, there is kind of like a stigma with alien abductees. Like you said, people all want to talk about seeing flying UFOs or UAPs, as they call them. I prefer UFOs. But yeah, that's all great. We're having congressional hearings and talking about that, and that's all fun. But as soon as someone says, "Oh, I was abducted by aliens," it's kind of like, "Oh." You're like the black sheep of that group, and it's something that's serious. It's something that is life altering. This leaves people with, PTSD and traumatic. It's a traumatic experience, and I agree with you. Most of these experiences are all negative. I have a good friend, Ginger, who, she's still recovering from that, from being abducted by the greys and seeing the greys. It's very traumatic.
I mean, last year I was diagnosed as having complex PTSD. So complex PTSD is multiple abuse over a period of time that's not being healed. The abuse that I have had, other things that have happened to me, I think it's again a theme that tends to run through abductees' lives, where they've had quite a lot of bad experiences in this world, rather than the multi-dimensional world, and they sort of in some ways they tie together. And you know, but the trauma that I have, you know, I experience night terrors, which are quite regular. You know, I can't switch off the light at night. I have to keep it on, so your sleep's disturbed. You know, I have panic attacks still. Things trigger me that are associated with the abductions by the Greys. And so, you know, you're living with this type of trauma on a daily basis, and it affects you in lots of different ways. And it, you know, it destroys a part of your life, really. I mean, somebody said to me, you know, last year when I was at some event, you know, would you do a talk, you know, about your experiences? And she said to me, you're quite lucky, really, because you've been chosen and you're special. And, you know, I wasn't rude to the lady, but I had to put her straight. And I said to her, you know, I don't consider myself to be chosen, and I don't consider myself to be, you know, special. I consider myself to be a normal guy that just has these experiences. But you know, where you know, no authentic abductee will ever tell you that they're chosen or special. They just won't, you know, because when you're having these experiences, who the hell wants to be chosen or special and have these experiences? For most parts, you consider them to be a curse.
I could definitely imagine. And, you know, some of the abductees say that they are being told by the aliens or you know, or like maybe a handler that, yeah, you are special, you are chosen, you know, like that's the wording that they use. And by no means are they wanting to be chosen or they wanting to be special. You know, it's like, no, I don't want any of that. I'm a normal person. And it's almost like this brainwashing, or, you know, trying to convince you that this is a good thing when in fact it sure doesn't look like that, or it isn't.
I mean, yeah, it's unfortunate, really. I mean, you know, I've come across people, you know, what I would say in the New Age communities, and they speak about, you know, alien abduction, and some of them, you know, I would say they're authentic in the sense that they've had abductions as children, but then they've had the Greys speaking to them, like you just described, telling them they're special and they're chosen. What that does is it plays on their ego. And when it plays on their ego, they're more likely to defend the actions of the Greys and what they do because they feel they're special. But the fact is that they're being used in order to create a narrative that's deceptive, in order to win support, I guess, from other people, to allow then the Greys to do what they do because they're doing it for the good of you. You know, when in actual fact, anything they do, especially when they're taking children who can't defend themselves, they don't often have a voice, they're not often believed, they're considered to be, you know, their imagination. When that happens, that abuse is occurring over and over again for those children because no one believes them. And when you got people then in the community, unfortunately, people who I won't say the name of, but who are quite well connected in these communities, they're laying out a deceptive plan laid bare by the Greys to, you know, to reinforce this nonsense that what they're doing and what they're doing here is positive and for the benefit of mankind or humankind, and it's not. It's just not. And these people, unfortunately, should really be dealing with their shadow selves, and rather than, you know, being caught up in this egotistic, you know, experience. Because you got to see, you know, you look at the actions of these beings, you know, and what they're doing. You know, talk is cheap. When you look at their actions and what they're doing, you can quite easily see that what they're doing is not good.
Yes, it's clear as day. You know, any type of abduction against your will it's not good, plain and simple. What do you think their end game is, or why do you feel that they are abducting people?
I think there's lots of reasons, and I think one of the problems with disclosure as well is that, you know, the governments will never disclose what's happening. They might disclose they may disclose that there's lights in the sky and that they can see this and that. They're never going to disclose that they've made secret pacts with the Greys to abduct, human beings, probably in exchange for technology and knowledge. So it would appear that's probably what's going on in the background, decades ago from, testimony, so witness testimonies and experiences speaking about stuff. But, disclosure won't happen in that way. And I think you'll find that these beings are involved in a much deeper and more sinister way with human beings and have done again for centuries. This is their playground.
Yeah.
And they're not at the moment, they're not ready to leave this playground because they're gaining something from us. Even if they take genetic material, that's been taken by force. None of these people have given them permission to do that. And no matter what, if you're from the Earth or you're from other planet or you're from a multi-dimensional realm, you have no right to do that unless that person, that soul, gives you permission, and they don't give them permission. So even if they're taking that, then what are they doing with it? They're replicating it. What are they doing with that? And where does that go? It doesn't. And what gets my goat as well is that people say that these beings are, they're thousands and thousands of years. Yeah, they are thousands of years, but that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be spiritually advanced because you're thousands of years. You're not. These beings are not spiritually advanced creatures. They're not. They just take what they want, and they take it because at the moment they can. And there's no one stopping them. But in actual fact, there's people like our military and alphabet agencies that are actually probably working alongside them, allowing them to do this.
Oh, I agree. I agree totally. I think they're aiding and abetting, with this, and they're it's because they're probably benefiting in some way. It's like, yeah, if you allow us to do this, or you give us the permission, perhaps, by voting in presidents or voting in prime ministers, we're actively saying that yes, we want to be involved in this, and any decision they make is for us. So
Sure.
in essence, then, I think it was Eisenhower who possibly could have, allowed, when he had the alleged, meeting with the UFOs and the aliens, that he could have allowed them to take, X amount of people. And like, this is, it's really interesting. And so I agree with you. Like, this is all nefarious and everything and I agree that they're taking genetic material. But why do you think they're taking genetic material? Like, what is your thoughts? And again, like, I'm not here to judge or anything. I've had some far out, but I in my opinion, on the mark, speculations, because that's or conjectures. That is what we can say, But what do you feel?
I think the Greys are very much interested in our DNA. But I think that as well with alien abduction as well, they're interested in specific bloodlines. They're obviously interested in generational timelines with certain people. So there seems to be some sort of goal in mind for what they do with that. I don't think they're just taking genetic material. I think they're taking human beings off here as well and out of here, almost like a human trafficking. We know as well you have my labs, which are basically re-abducted by the military, normally for interrogation. And we know that a lot of females, my labs, are taken. These are all alien abductees. So the alien abductees are abducted by the Greys, and then they're re-abducted by the military. So the military can then discover what the Greys have been talking to them about. This often leads to being taken to deep underground military bases, which we know crisscross the whole planet. Often they're under places that are, which are just the normal buildings, almost, it's like in plain sight.
Yes.
So they're disguised up the top, on the top part. It's a normal looking building, but below you have a military installation. A lot of abductees are. taken to these places, but they're also taken to these underground facilities outside of their body. They're not taken there physically. They're removed from the physical body whilst they sleep.
Okay. Like an astral, like they're stealing their astral body is kind of what.
Well, it's astral. It's the astral body, but it's an out of body experience. So you know the difference is that you know you come outside of your body and you can move around your immediate environment or travel out a little bit. But the astral is, you know, you're moving through, which literally would be a stargate into the fourth dimension of the Earth.
Do you believe that that is happening in our dream state, in our dream time? You know, that we're actually being being abducted in our dream time?
Well, I'm a conscious projector, and I've been since a child. So I can move in and out of my body easily. And a lot of my abductions do take place outside of the body. You often find that when you leave the body, sometimes they're waiting for you.
Interesting.
And I've
scary,
had these...
terrifying as well.
Yeah. I mean, you know, I've had these experiences with the military where I've been taken by the military outside of the body and basically forced to go to some of these facilities. And it doesn't matter when you're outside of the body, as I describe in my book, there are no borders, there are no passports. You can go literally where you want. There are some places you can't go for various reasons, like Area 51, for example. You can travel to Area 51. I've been to Area 51 and I've broken into their base whilst outside of the body, but I was caught in a containment field, which is designed to trap remote viewers and people traveling outside their bodies. And what they do is you're contained, you're basically your soul body or your astral body is trapped within this field. And when you're in this field, you're interrogated. So you're interrogated, your soul body is interrogated. So you're speaking to these people, military, and they're asking you questions about why you're in the base. But what happens there is if you can't escape from this containment field, your body, which is basically, you know, which is in your bed as an example, that your body will die and you'll remain there as long as they want you there.
So it's kind of like they'll cut like the silver cord that connects you between.
Yeah, the silver cord will break and it will naturally dissolve. But and your death then would look under normal circumstances, just, you know,
died in your sleep.
Yeah, died in your sleep. There won't be really no cause. It's just because you've left your body. But the thing is, they have these particular devices in Area 51, and they have, you know, they have them in other places. So there's certain places that you can go if you're a remote viewer, but you're you know, there are devices or pieces of technology that are in place to trap you. You know, I've spoken to someone else as well that's had similar experiences to me in this particular base where they've been caught again in one of these containment fields. You know, I was lucky. I managed to escape. And it wasn't the first time. I've been caught in two others. You know, they're like spider webs, but you can get out of them.
Okay.
But it can be difficult, but you can. I was lucky. I got out of one.
This is fascinating. This is really intriguing conversation, Mike. I like where this is going. You know, with it's very, very fascinating. I definitely, you know, I know we're coming closer to an end, and I do want to. I would love to have you back. And when you're saying generational, I keep thinking of a previous guest I had from Australia, Sebastian. He runs like a UFO documenting where he documents all UFO activity. And I would love to have you both on at the same time. Sure. I think you would have a lot to, you know, some great inputs and whatnot, and just basically have a great conversation, you know.
The thing is, the alien abduction program, as I call it, it's a huge subject. It's very complex, but, you know, but it's a huge subject, and it's one that needs a lot more investigation. you know, and it's good really to, you know, to share that information with other people and to see what similarities there are between us and what information we had, what experiences we've had. You know, you often find as well, sometimes abductees see each other on board these ships.
And like, I really feel that we literally just scratched the surface in this interview. Like, we haven't even gotten into any of this yet. And I would love to have you back on in the future, you know, maybe in a couple of months or something like that, Michael.
That'd be great.
Because this is really interesting. And when you're saying when other abductees see each other, have you ever ran into someone, you know, in regular, you know, regular everyday life that you've actually seen on one of these, you know, whether it be a vessel or underground facility or something like that?
I've got a friend actually who's had a lot of experiences with me, and so yeah, he's one of them. But you know, he is involved in the military side of it as well, as a you know, what you'd call on the SSP, the Secret Space Program.
Oh, okay.
So, you know, these
that's again, a whole other level as well.
Of course, these are taboo subjects as well, which are not easily considered within the UFO communities. You know, I myself are SSP as well.
Okay.
I'm a veteran of the SSP.
So, and for those who don't know, that's the Secret Space Program. Is that what you're talking about?
The Secret Space Program, that's right. And the project programs and sub-programs which are associated with these type of black projects. You know, and again, with the SSP though, again, those involved with the Secret Space Program, most of them you will find are alien abductees taken by the Greys as children and recruited by the military into these projects. Again, not by choice, against their will. You know, but the SSP is, as you said, it's a altogether different subject that goes down the rabbit hole a little bit more deeper. And you know, can be quite controversial, but you'll find, you know, this is where the a lot of the disclosure will come from in the future. It will come from these type of communities.
Fascinating. Yeah, Michael, I totally, definitely want to have you back. And so what I'd love for you to do is, you know, tell our viewers and listeners where they can find your book, where they can purchase it. And if you have a website as well, please let them know where they can go.
Yeah, my book is available. It's on Amazon. It's on paperback, hardcover, audio, and Kindle. Anyone who wants to reach me, they can reach me on my email, which is, you know, lowercase Michael Kameron with a K at 2022 at gmail.com. And I'm also on Facebook. You can find me again with Kameron with a K.
Yeah, that's where I got a hold of you, was on Facebook.
Sure.
Yeah. Awesome. Michael, I really want to say thank you again so much for making the time and coming on. Sure. Like I said, I feel we just scratched the surface. This could go for hours, and I know I don't want to keep you too long. But I want to say thank you, and we're definitely going to have you back here in the future. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you. It was a pleasure being here.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Okay, everyone. That was Michael Kameron, and if you're like me, we just scratched the surface. That's what I feel. I feel like there was so much more we could have gone into. You know, his abduction stories you know, had so many similarities to these past ones that we've been talking about. You know, Zach with the past life, you know, and then we're talking about, you know, Karen Wilkinson as well. So many similarities. And like Michael says, you know, this is nefarious. If they're taking you against your will, taking children against their will, that's not a good being. That's not a good thing. So I hope you enjoyed the show tonight. And, you know, if you yourself have any experiences or anything you want to share, you can always email me at codexofcuriosities@gmail.com. You can find me on Facebook. I have a Facebook group as well. Me, Ry Voss, on Facebook. Look me up and I will always answer. You know, check out the YouTube channel. leave comments, and again, message me, and we'll see what we can do to get you on and tell your story. So as usual, as we come to an end of another chapter, and we can see the shadows lengthening and hear the darkness whispering its seductive lullabies, let us all remember to keep our hearts pure, as they are a beacon against the encroaching night. They are a symbol of our unwavering resolve. Until we meet again, may your curiosity always wander, and may your light remain lit. And finally, may you always find your way home. I look forward to our next adventure together as we navigate the mysteries that lie ahead. Until our paths cross again, keep your curiosity wandering and ensure the light remains lit.